Divorce can be like rape, and in some ways it can be worse. And not all divorces are equal. I want to state that up front. Now, I didn't want a divorce, and as a MGTOW who would never go back to that lifestyle and that maintain that era of social norms, yeah, I'd never go back to it. And I'm often at odds with rectifying the fact that I didn't want to become where I am now, but here I am and I wouldn't want to go back. Before I was aware that I was a MGTOW and before the divorce, I put everything into the marriage. For context, my ex and I went to one last counseling session, and that's when it was stated that it was not repairable. And as I think to that event, I can't really recall it. I am trying to actually reach out to that counselor to see if I can talk to her or get notes on what happened. But she recently, I guess, moved, and like I said, I drove by, called, and she's not there anymore, so I would have to try and find where she went, I'm assuming, or I don't know if they keep patient notes on the site of the practice, if that makes sense. I don't know how that works. I didn't ask. I'm just kind of hesitant to go there. It's a lot of work. So, exactly what was said, I can't recall, but that was the moment that I realized the following. My ex told me, as have others, that it wasn't me, it was her. There's nothing I could have done differently. At the same time, people will look at me and say, you need to learn lessons from this and move on, as if the lesson is from the perspective or view of how do I need to get back into the mental state where I can take that abuse of a relationship all over again. Or instead of thinking, like, what the heck just happened? Why would I want to go through that again when I have zero power on the end result? So, if I answer that question, the lesson that I learned is this, and this is what I tell people. So I learned you can do by because I look for criticisms. I want to know what I did wrong as to not repeat them in life. And that's just my philosophy. I don't mind if you never want to talk to me again. I would just want to know why. So, A, I know it's either you and you're dumb or stupid and want that, or maybe it is something I did and I don't want to do that in the future for someone else. And maybe I can repair that situation if I can remedy this and fix myself because it may be a legit issue. Or again, it may be the other person being overly sensitive or something of that nature. So if the lesson I learned is you can do everything right, you can try everything, you can give your all to fix everything, but no matter what, that means nothing. There is not one thing you can do before, during, or after that can make someone continue to love you or help them explain why they don't, or maybe try to see if the situation is fixable. That doesn't matter. None of that matters. You've done it all right up to that whole point already, and you're still doing it right, but that doesn't matter. That's the lesson I'm supposed to take into a next relationship. Here, next woman, here's everything, and hopefully it works out for me. But if it doesn't, don't worry about it. Take most of my stuff, ruin my life, all those relationships and times, blah, blah, take them. Don't need them anymore. We're good. Now, I want to explain why I feel raped after my divorce, and this is going to be very controversial, and I don't particularly care. I have 3 daughters. I want to give my kids the best life I could possibly ever give them. And the truth is, again, this is just so at odds with my current MGTOW mentality and position and philosophies in life, but I want to give my kids the best life, and the best environment for them is a stable 2-person, 2-parent environment where they're raised in that environment to see the pros and cons of relationships, the gives and the takes, the ups and the downs, the struggles, how you can comfort one another, how your actions can do the opposite and make someone in the family uncomfortable, or you can hurt someone in the family even if you're not trying to. And then if you do that, what to do with that person because you love them and you saw what daddy did to mom the one time he hurt mommy's feelings. He didn't just say, "Well, then we divorce. Deuces." No, he said, "Okay, well, I'm sorry. I bought flowers. I talked. I apologized. I asked what I did." Those are things that you want your kids to see. My kids don't see that. They see that mom didn't want it, so she just bailed. That's the one of the lessons again. And it's not that you teach kids things, it's that they emulate things. They see things and they repeat them through actions, not through words. And those are things that you subconsciously implant into your kids. The willingness to try or the willingness to not. The willingness to be patient, the willingness to, as I keep saying, suffer for others for the benefit of everybody, or at least the people that you immediately care about. And I say often it tears me apart inside knowing that on the best days, weeks, and months of my kids' lives, they will only usually see one of their parents. And on a day-to-day basis, one of us, and I don't care if my ex cares about that, that's on her, but I would love to see every day that my kids come home and did something good or bad in school. I'd love to be the one to discipline them if they do something bad. Wonder why I didn't catch that earlier. Why are they doing that? What could I have done? Or praise them when they do good. Note what they're doing. See what's going on in their life. Ask what their friends are doing, what they learned in school. I'm missing out on all that. They're missing out on me being involved in that. And just by simple way, the fact that, for example, my ex works, I don't, those are times that I would be able to see my kids more, except for the fact that they're at my ex's. They're missing that. They're in daycares and after school programs instead of with their parents at any capacity. And again, I'm not saying, judging my ex on her lifestyle, she has to work to pay for, the kids. I had to come in and interject in this part as I'm editing the video because I want to say this clearly. My kids were taken from me, and I only get to see my kids half of my life because the woman I had my kids with decided I don't get to see my kids anymore. My alternative was, as a 100% disabled veteran who was in the process of losing the house, unable to work, then find the money to go through a divorce, not just a regular divorce, mind you, not just the incurred cost of getting divorced, one that would have, because I would have to have sued the pants off of my ex and gone and incurred such an amount of financial debt that if I lost, I would have been so buried, I thought about that, would have committed suicide. Or if she would have took my kids from me and I couldn't have afforded to fight to get my kids back and lost, I probably would have committed suicide. So again, I didn't want any of this. And I can't see my kids after school today because I would have to sue my wife and get into so much debt that I would not be able to live to be able to do that, and then have my kids come and live in an environment like that. It's, again, I didn't want any of that. I don't want it now. I sure as hell don't want to be anywhere near my ex. And that's just the reality, the paradox of the situation today. But that is the reality. I can't get enough time with my kids. I also don't have the energy as a single father to do all of that all the time. And I need what I call my time off to do things like lug laundry downstairs and then take a day off to, recuperate. Sometimes I just lay around and do nothing for half of a day after doing laundry because after I walk 2 or 3 baskets downstairs, across, back up, again 2 or 3 times, I have to come here and bend over on the floor or the table depending on how I do it and do laundry for an hour, which, spoiler alert, is not the greatest thing for my back. I didn't want any of this, but it is. And the thing I'm most resentful, or I'm not super resentful at all, because if I could look at this differently, my children removed, I'm a more knowledgeable person. And in spite of my situation not being better, I'm a better person. But I can't, you know, navigate that situation without my kids. So I don't know. It's frustrating, and I still don't have a say. So I just again wanted to put that in there because I wasn't elaborating right, and I just focused on that. I'm not saying that my kids are just taken from me by this, whether you want to say my ex, the state, whatever. But it's just such a, I don't know. I hope none of you ever have to deal with it. And sadly, a lot of fathers and probably mothers, I'm assuming too, have to deal with that when they got, I don't know, man. It is what it is. I'm gonna hop back into the edit. But at some point you have to start questioning, when is it worth it to make this little extra money that I don't necessarily need, and doing that at the expense of seeing my kids. When kids see that, they're put in a position where they could say, Mommy's doing that because she doesn't like me and doesn't want to see me, or Mommy's doing that because if she does it now, we get to go on vacations and make that extra money. That's for them to decide, and I don't want to put into them because I don't know their mom's intentions. But I do know that as an adult, what you do has consequences, and through the eyes of a kid, those consequences are not always as you intend them. And if they're not, you need to be the adult and help them interpret that and instill that meaning and purpose into their actions that otherwise would be kind of conflicting or paradoxical in nature with what you're trying to instill in them. You can't contradict your kid with your words and your actions. You need to mirror both, but actions are what they see. If you walk like a weirdo all of your life, when they're growing up, they're going to walk like a weirdo. If you don't look at them while you're talking to them, they're not going to look at others, and vice versa. You don't tell them, don't look at me, kid. But when you're having conversations like this all the time, why would they look at your face when you're not looking into theirs? Without saying a word, you've taught them something. Now I can sit there and say, hey, look at me when I'm talking to you. Look at me right now. Why aren't you looking at me? And the kid's like, well, you're not looking at me to know if I'm even looking at you. So again, in doing these things by saying and doing the opposite or contradicting yourself, you're just creating that environment. That is the thing that parents need to balance. I say, so I don't get to see my kids. They don't get to see their parents. And none of that was the kids' decisions, obviously. None of that was my decision. I never wanted it. I never had a choice. I never moved towards that. Everything I did up until the moment that it was completely final, and I mean cemented in my head that anything I do is a waste, I spent trying to fix, to understand what I was doing wrong, what I wasn't doing, what more I could do, to see what I was doing, and okay, obviously, trying to fix it this way by being honest and caring and supportive isn't working. So I can't do that, but I'm not going to be a dirtbag, so I need to find some medium between trying to be a loving, caring husband, understand what's going on and fix things, and neglect. I don't want to do either of those now, so it's not things I'm used to. My ex took my life and the life I built for my kids, and I had no say in the matter, and neither do they. There's no amount of anything I can do today that will remedy that. And I can try, I can put in 100% when I have my kids. And again, my youngest daughter spent the night last night. It's not my week, I say, not that I take time off, but as often as I can take them, I do. But my life I built for my kids is just gone, and I had to split. I have to live now with a split family. I split my possessions. I had to change my entire view on society because this whole thing shattered the concept of what I thought society was and how I thought it worked. Now, onto a more personal level, I have developed relationships with my ex's family and friends and people she loved and all that. I met people who invited me into their home or vice versa, and we hugged, and after years of being together, loved each other. They held my kids, I held their kids. We watched each other's family grow up. When living in California, we would visit them or going back there. And then one day, because my ex decided I don't want to be with you anymore, that was all gone. Those people stopped loving me, stopped caring about me, stopped looking at me as if I had even been a part of their life, and instead looked at me like I had deceived them, like I had lied or changed. When I would, it blew me away. And I often say we view the world through the lens of our own biases. I would never stop talking to you because of something your wife or my wife did. And I couldn't comprehend that. I was shocked, like a mental state of shock. When it clicked what was happening, just because at that point, what do I say to them? It's like, no, you're wrong, or what did I do? Because does that even matter? If they're not talking to me, what difference does it make what I ask them? I, and again, I want to say, like, well, okay, maybe it's something I did. Again, because at that time, I didn't have that MGTOW perspective to understand what was going on. Again, I don't get mad at people for something they didn't do, so there's no way they're upset at me and no longer love me. And if I walked by them, they would not hug me because my ex decided she didn't want to be with me anymore. Because I did everything right and there's nothing more I could have done differently. Not saying that's the case. Again, just to be able to better manage relationships, I always want to know if I'm at fault for something. I'm not an egomaniac who thinks it's always you. I know how bad I am at communicating, so I always try to err on the side of it could have been me. I'd rather think that and be right than not think that and be wrong, I guess. I couldn't comprehend that. And no warning, no word. They never, again, and in between all that, never asked how I was, what was going on. Again, so now I have entire years and portions and eras of my life moments that I can't look back to or think back on without tiptoeing on more of these emotional traumas, like, oh yeah, we were at so-and-so's house. Wait, why don't I talk to them? And oh, there's no reason I don't talk to them anymore. They just decided they don't love me the next day. And for context, I was the victim of sexual crimes growing up. I, at least from my personal perspective and experiences, can compare the two. And one day, because when you're alone, you have a lot of time to think, I asked myself, even maybe when I should not have, if I could go back and undo the trauma of my sexual trauma growing up, or undo the trauma from the divorce, which one would I choose? And it's not easy to navigate. I've gotten over and deal with what happened to me as a kid. But when I think about my divorce and how I was just not involved the entire time, I was taken through a divorce, and living with that person, context again is king. One time during the divorce, during the divorce, my mother was passing away of lung cancer, and I was trying to navigate all of that, plus the fact that she was pregnant with what ended up being our third kid, but at the time, I didn't know, and she would not get a test until I had to get my own after to make sure that the kid was mine. With all of that going on one night, she tells me, when will you stop using your mom being sick as a reason to be upset or sad all the time? And those are the things I had to deal with the mother of my kids. And even as I think about it, like, I can't answer the question for myself, but in moments like this, I feel like I can, and in moments like this, I can't help but admit the divorce was worse. I learned lessons from what happened as a kid, not from the divorce. Then again, put that next to the MGTOW aspect and now how I see things working and how they really are. It's weird because after the divorce, I'm better off. I can't imagine how wrecked I'd have been 5 or 10 years, 15, 20 more years later. I'd have met more people, made more moments in my life, been told more falsehood, been introduced to more people who are no longer in my life, gone to more places I can't revisit or think of. And I'd look back on those things that I thought were something, and I'd question all of those moments, wonder how long those people had been lying, had been deceiving, had been lying by omission. I don't know. Not all divorces are the same, and this is my own. Let me know your thoughts below.